He thought he had it all: the brilliant, wealthy wife, the Silicon Valley mansion, and the beautiful young mistress on the side. He thought his wife was on another continent, securing another deal. So he gave his mistress the key, telling her this is all ours now. He walked her through the marble foyer into his wife's closet and popped champagne from her wine cellar. But there was one detail he missed, one signature on one document. He didn't know that the wife he was betraying was the only one whose name was on the deed, and she was watching every move he made. The gates of 14 Serenity Point were magnificent, wrought iron stylized into the shape of willow branches, parted with a near-silent hydraulic hum. They protected a fortress of glass California redwood and brushed steel that cantilevered over the sloping green hills of Los Altos Hills. To the world, this was the home of Evelyn Vance and Michael Thorne, the valley's golden couple. Evelyn, the 38-year-old self-made CEO of Ether AI, a company on the verge of revolutionizing logistics. And Michael, her handsome, charismatic husband, a strategic consultant who hadn't consulted on anything strategic in years unless it involved his golf handicap or his portfolio of polo shirts. The mansion was Evelyn's creation. She had sketched the initial design on a cocktail napkin during a layover in Dubai. She'd obsessed over the Italian marble, the seamless integration of the Creston home automation, and the infinity pool that seemed to pour directly into the San Francisco Bay. Michael had helped by approving her choices. This evening the house was quiet. Evelyn had just returned from a 4-day AI summit in Seoul. The 14-hour flight had left her drained, but a familiar restlessness pulsed beneath her skin. For the last 6 months, this house had felt less like a home and more like an opulent stage. Michael was late. He was always late. She stood in the cavernous living room, a 30-foot wall of glass showcasing the glittering lights below. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from him. Michael hit terrible traffic. Meeting with the VC ran long. Don't wait up, my love. XO. Evelyn stared at the text. A VC, a venture capitalist. Michael hadn't had a meeting with a VC since his own startup spectacularly imploded 3 years ago, an event that had cost Evelyn a non-trivial 7 figures to make right. A cold certainty settled in her stomach. She knew he wasn't in traffic. She knew he wasn't at a meeting. She knew this because 3 hours ago her private investigator, a quiet man named Harrison, had sent her a single photo. It was Michael laughing as he exited a restaurant in Santana Row. With him was a young woman, a blonde with a dazzlingly white smile and a dress that looked expensive but wasn't. Evelyn had known for 6 months. The discovery had been as banal as it was devastating. A separate credit card bill mailed to his small, unused office downtown. A Amex Centurion card, a duplicate of her account that she had never authorized. The charges were a map of his betrayal. The Clift Hotel. Dinners at Saison. Ludicrous purchases at Cartier. For a lesser woman, the discovery might have sparked a fiery confrontation. But Evelyn Vance hadn't built a billion-dollar company on impulse. She built it on data strategy and ruthless patience. She walked to the master control panel, its blue light glowing softly on the wall. She accessed the security logs. Michael had left the house at 4:30 p.m. He had told her his meeting was at 5:00 p.m. The restaurant Harrison photographed him at was a 15-minute drive. He had been with this woman for hours. She looked at her calendar. Next week, she was scheduled to fly to Zurich to finalize a massive merger. It was a 48-hour trip critical to Ether AI's future. A plan cold and precise began to form in her mind. Michael believed her to be a brilliant but ultimately predictable workaholic. He believed her love for him and her focus on her work made her blind. He believed he was the charming, clever one. He had forgotten who he was married to. "James," she said to her phone. It rang twice. "Evelyn, you're back." The voice was warm, professional. James Hayes had been her attorney for a decade, the sharpest mind at Hadrian Stone LLP. "I'm back," she said, her voice betraying no emotion. "And I have a new itinerary for the Zurich trip." "Oh, I'm not going to Zurich. I'm going to the Four Seasons in Palo Alto, but Michael will believe I'm in Switzerland." There was a heavy pause. "Evelyn, it's confirmed then." "Confirmed and documented," she said. "Now I need you to pull the incorporation papers for Vance Heritage Holdings LLC. And I want a full review of the prenup, specifically Section 4, subsection B, the infidelity clause." "I'm opening them right now," James said, the faint clicking of his keyboard in the background. "It's ironclad, Evelyn. You know it is." "I know," she said, looking out at the city she felt she owned. "But I want to be reminded of just how ironclad it is before I burn his entire world to the ground." The week leading up to the Zurich trip was a masterpiece of theatre. Evelyn was the perfect, attentive, stressed-out CEO. She discussed the merger with Michael over dinner, feigning anxiety about the negotiations. Michael, in turn, was the perfect supportive husband. He rubbed her shoulders, poured her expensive Pinot Noir from her cellar, and offered platitudes. "You'll kill it, Evelyn. You always do," he said, his eyes already distant, already planning. "Just focus on the deal. I'll hold down the fort here." "I know you will, darling," she'd replied, smiling. "What would I do without you?" The fort he planned to hold was the one she had built. The trap was intricate, layered with legal precautions she had taken years ago, long before the infidelity. When Evelyn first hit her stride with Ether AI, James Hayes, her lawyer, had insisted on a new asset protection strategy. "You're not just Evelyn Vance anymore," he'd explained over coffee. "You're a target for lawsuits, for competitors, for bad actors. We need to insulate your personal assets from your corporate ones. We create an umbrella." The umbrella was Vance Heritage Holdings LLC, a Delaware-based limited liability company. Evelyn was the sole member. When she purchased the land in Los Altos Hills, the deed was recorded under the LLC's name. When she paid the contractors to build the mansion, the checks were drawn from the LLC's account. Michael had been present for all of it, but he was famously allergic to paperwork. He'd seen the LLC's name and assumed it was just some tax thing James had set up for them. He never read the incorporation documents. He never asked why his name wasn't on a single piece of title. He just assumed California's community property laws meant what's hers is ours. He had also, in his haste to marry the most successful woman he'd ever met, barely skimmed the prenuptial agreement. He'd seen the generous spousal support provisions and the carve-out for his failed startup. He missed Section 4, subsection B, the morality clause. It stated clearly that if either party engaged in adulterous or defamatory behavior that brought provable reputational or emotional harm to the other, they would forfeit all claims to spousal support and shared assets reverting to only what they personally brought into the marriage. For Michael, that was a 2018 Porsche 911, a birthday gift from Evelyn, and a mountain of debt. The day of her flight arrived. Michael drove her to SFO in her Tesla Model S Plaid. He kissed her goodbye at the international terminal. "Good luck, my love. Close that deal." I'll text you when I land." She smiled, pulling her carry-on. He watched her walk through the security line, a picture of devotion. The moment she was out of sight, she exited the terminal, doubled back to the domestic garage, and got into a discreet black Audi sedan, driven by Harrison, her PI. "He's on the move," Harrison said, his voice a low monotone. "Where?" He just U-turned back towards the city. "He's on his way to a condo in the marina. Her name is Clara Jensen. 26, aspiring lifestyle blogger." "Of course she is," Evelyn said dryly. "Take me to the hotel. I want eyes on my house." From her suite at the Four Seasons, Evelyn had a god's-eye view. Harrison had set up a dedicated feed patching directly into the mansion's extensive security system, a system Michael had never bothered to learn the admin codes for. She had 16 different angles, all in high definition. At 7:15 p.m., Michael's Porsche roared up the driveway. He wasn't alone. Clara Jensen emerged from the passenger side, staring up at the house with undisguised awe. "Oh my God, Michael!" Evelyn could hear Clara's voice, faint but clear on the driveway microphone. It's a palace." "And it's all ours, baby," Michael said, his voice dripping with a smug, proprietary air that made Evelyn's blood run cold. He unlocked the 20-foot redwood door. "Welcome home." Evelyn watched them step inside. She watched him disable the main alarm, not knowing he was only disabling the guest partition. The administrator partition, her partition remained fully active, logging every sound, every movement. "James, are you on?" Evelyn said into her phone. "I'm here, Evelyn. I have the live feed." "Good," Evelyn said, her eyes fixed on the screen. "Let's see just how at home he plans to make her." For Clara Jensen, this was the moment her life truly began. The man she'd been seeing for 6 months, the handsome, charming Michael Thorne, was finally making good on his promises. His cold work-obsessed wife was gone, and he was moving her into the palace she deserved. "I can't believe this is real," she breathed, spinning in the center of the grand foyer. A custom-made Fazioli piano sat gleaming in the corner. "This is just the entrance." Michael beamed high on the thrill of transgression. He felt a potent, intoxicating sense of power. This was his house now. Evelyn, with her endless board meetings and her cold, analytical mind, didn't deserve it. She didn't appreciate it. But he did. And Clara did. "Let's get you a drink," he said. "The wine cellar is ridiculous. Evelyn has stuff in there that costs more than my first car." "Show me everything," Clara demanded, her eyes wide. From her hotel suite, Evelyn watched. She watched them descend the spiral staircase to the climate-controlled wine cellar. She watched Michael grab a bottle of Chateau Margaux, a 2005 vintage she had been saving for their 10th anniversary. A $2,000 bottle of wine opened on a Tuesday for a woman he'd met 6 months ago. "To us?" Michael toasted back in the main living room. They clinked glasses. "To us," Clara purred. "And to this house. I have so many ideas for this room. That grey sofa is so sterile. We need something with color. Velvet, maybe?" Michael nodded enthusiastically. "Whatever you want, baby. When the divorce is final, this place is getting a full makeover. Your style." Evelyn felt a bitter laugh rise in her throat. Her style. The sofa Clara was insulting was a custom-milled Brioni, and it had cost $80,000. The real violation came next. "Now," Clara said, setting her glass down, "the one place I've really been dying to see." "Oh," Michael grinned, pulling her close. "The closet. I want to see the Queen's lair." Evelyn's hand tightened on her phone. The closet was her sanctuary. A 2-room suite, temperature-controlled with biometric access. Michael, however, had a guest override. She watched him press his thumb to the scanner. It flashed red, then green. The door hissed open. Clara gasped. It wasn't a closet. It was a boutique. Rows of Chanel Dior and Acris were organized by color and season. A glass-topped island displayed jewelry. A wall of glass shelves held a collection of Birkin and Kelly bags that would put a Hermes showroom to shame. "My God," Clara whispered. She walked past the row of suits Evelyn wore for her board meetings, making a face. So boring, all grey and black. She drifted toward the evening gowns. She pulled out a shimmering, silver-beaded Jenny Packham gown that Evelyn had worn to the Met Gala. "This, though," Clara said, holding it against her body. "This has potential." She kicked off her shoes and began to undress right there in the middle of Evelyn's sanctuary. "Michael, zip me up." From the hotel, Evelyn watched the 26-year-old blogger pose and preen in her $30,000 gown. She pirouetted her reflection captured in the three-way mirror. "It's a little tight in the bust," Clara noted critically. "But I could make it work." "What do you think?" "I think," Michael said, his voice thick as he pulled her in, "that you look better in it than she ever did." He kissed her, his hands roaming over the silk and beads. Then Clara did the one thing that broke through Evelyn's cold resolve and touched the raw nerve of her fury. She walked to Evelyn's vanity, picked up the antique crystal bottle of Guerlain Le Heure Bleu, a perfume Evelyn's grandmother had worn, a scent so personal she rarely used it, and doused herself in it. "Smells like an old lady." Clara coughed, waving her hand. "We'll have to throw this out." Evelyn stood up from her chair. "That's enough," she said to the empty hotel room. She picked up her car keys. "James are the security officers in place. 2 officers stationed at the service entrance on your command," James's voice replied, taut with adrenaline. "And you have the documents ready to file. Ready to e-file with the county court the second you give the word." "Good," Evelyn said, walking to the door. "I'm going home." The 10-mile drive from Palo Alto to Los Altos Hills was the longest of Evelyn's life. She drove the black Audi, not her Tesla. She wanted silence. She wanted the element of complete surprise. Her mind was a high-functioning supercomputer, running scenarios, calculating risks, and processing the emotional data of the last 6 months. The sadness was gone, calcified into something harder, more useful. It was pure, unadulterated resolve. She pulled up to the service road, half a mile from her driveway, and cut the engine. She could see her own house blazing with light, a beacon of her success now contaminated by her husband's deceit. "Officers," she spoke into her phone. "This is Administrator Vance. I am on site. I am entering the property alone. You are to remain at your post until I give the code word. The code word is Section 4. Do you copy?" "Copied, Ms. Vance," a gravelly voice returned. She walked up the stone path, her heels clicking softly. She didn't go to the front door. She went to a maintenance panel hidden behind a row of cypress trees. She opened it and bypassed the main gate controls. The grand iron willows remained shut. Michael and Clara were inside, but they were now effectively locked in. She entered the house through the kitchen, using her thumbprint on a private staff sensor. The kitchen was dark. She could hear them. They had moved back to the grand living room, the $2,000 bottle of Margot nearly empty between them. They had music playing some generic pulsing pop song that was vibrating the $100,000 speakers she'd had installed. They were dancing, laughing. Clara, still in Evelyn's Met Gala gown, was draped over Michael, kissing his neck. "When do we tell her?" Clara asked, her voice slightly slurred. After the merger, Michael set his hands on her waist. After the stock options vest. I've been with her for 10 years. I'm owed. I'm going to take half Clara, half of everything. This house, the art, the stock, we'll be set for life. We'll never have to work again. And her, what happens to her, who cares? Michael laughed. She'll have her work. She can cry into her spreadsheets. Evelyn stood in the shadows of the hallway arch. She had heard enough. She raised her personal phone. She didn't need to touch a panel. She was the administrator. She opened the Creston Vance custom app. She pressed a single icon labeled Panic. The effect was instantaneous. The pulsing pop music cut off, replaced by a deafening silence. Then every light in the 10,000-square-foot house snapped on to full, blinding 100% brightness. The automated privacy blinds, which had been closed, retracted into the ceiling with a series of loud, synchronized zips, exposing the room to the dark hills outside. A digitized, calm female voice, Evelyn's own, which she'd used for the custom AI, filled every room. Security alert. Unauthorized presence detected in Master Suite. Guest privileges revoked. Master lockdown engaged. Clara shrieked and stumbled back, her hand flying to her throat. "What the hell is that?" she yelled. Michael spun around, his face pale with panic. It's the security system. It's glitching. Evelyn must have, I don't know. Make it stop. I'm afraid I can't do that, Michael." Evelyn stepped out of the shadows. She was perfectly composed, dressed in the sharp black slacks and silk blouse she'd been wearing all day. Her face was calm, her hands clasped loosely in front of her. She looked like a CEO about to address a hostile board. Michael froze. His blood seemed to turn to ice. "Evelyn." "What? You're in Zurich." "Clearly I'm not," she said, her voice quiet, but projecting through the cavernous room. Clara stared, her mouth open, clutching the front of the silver gown. "Oh my God! Oh my God!" "Evelyn." Michael tried again, attempting to regain his footing. He stepped slightly in front of Clara, a pathetic, protective gesture. "I can explain. This isn't what it looks like." Evelyn let the silence hang for a moment. "It looks like you're in my living room, drinking my wine, with a woman wearing my dress. How... am I misinterpreting the data? You were gone," he sputtered. She's... Evelyn, we need to talk. I'm in love with her." "In love?" Evelyn repeated, nodding slowly. "I see. And you thought you'd celebrate this newfound love in my house?" "Our house!" Michael roared, his panic turning to bluster. "It's our house, Evelyn. Don't you dare stand there and act so high and mighty. This is community property. I am entitled to half of this house." He pointed a finger at her. "So yes, I'm here in my house with my girlfriend. And there's not a damn thing you can do about it." Evelyn smiled. It was a thin, cold, terrifying smile. "That's where you're mistaken, Michael," she said, taking another step into the light. "That is the single most expensive mistake you have ever made." Michael stared at her, his bravado faltering, replaced by a creeping dread. The house was still unnervingly bright, the AI voice silent, awaiting its next command. What are you talking about?" he stammered. "This house," Evelyn said, gesturing broadly. "This palace, as your guest called it. The land, the art, the very $80,000 sofa you're standing next to. It is not and has never been our house." Clara looked at Michael, her brow furrowed. Michael, what is she talking about? She's lying, Michael insisted, though his voice had lost its conviction. We built this together. I was here. I picked the tiles for the guest bath. You picked the tiles, Evelyn acknowledged with a tilt of her head. A truly monumental contribution. But you see, you didn't build this, Michael. I built this. And I didn't build it as Evelyn Vance, your wife. She paused, letting the words land. I built it as Vance Heritage Holdings, LLC, a limited liability corporation of which I am the sole member and proprietor. The color drained from Michael's face. He looked like he'd been punched. The LLC. That was just for taxes, James said. James, Evelyn said, is my lawyer. He did exactly as I instructed. He protected my assets from all liabilities, including, as it turns, in you. She took another step. This property, 14 Serenity Point, is a corporate asset. It is owned in its entirety by my company. You are not an officer of that company. You are not a signatory. You are not on the title. You are not on the deed. She looked from his horrified face to Clara's. In the eyes of the law, Michael, you are a guest. And right now, you and Miss Jensen, you are trespassing. Trespassing? Clara whispered, her hands shaking. Michael, she's bluffing. Am I? Evelyn's voice was sharp. She pulled out her phone and tapped the screen. Her lawyer's voice, James Hayes, came through on the house's speaker system, as clear as if he were in the room. Good evening, Michael, James's voice boomed. Michael jumped, spinning around as if looking for the source. James, what the hell is this? This is a formal notification, Michael, James said. As of 9:05 p.m. Pacific Time, you are being served. The dissolution of marriage papers have been filed with the Santa Clara County Superior Court. You're divorcing me. Michael looked back at Evelyn, his expression one of pure, pathetic shock. Of course I am, Evelyn said. But it gets worse for you. Michael. James's voice continued. I'd like to draw your attention to the prenuptial agreement you signed on June 1st, 2015. Specifically, Section 4, Subsection B, the morality clause. The what? Michael was pale as a sheet. The morality clause, Evelyn said, walking toward him. The one you didn't read because you were too busy calculating the spousal support. It states that any act of adultery, if proven, results in the immediate forfeiture of any and all claims to alimony, stock options, and shared marital assets. You can't prove it, Michael stammered, his eyes darting to Clara. Evelyn laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. Michael, we are in a smart house of my own design. You are being recorded by 4 different high-definition cameras in this room alone. I have 6 months of credit card statements from your secret Amex. I have a 30-page report from Mr. Harrison, my private investigator, detailing every single one of your meetings with Miss Jensen here. She turned her gaze to Clara, who looked like she was about to faint in the $30,000 gown. And I have you, Miss Jensen, on video in my closet trying on my clothes and declaring your intention to redecorate my home. I'd say the provable harm standard has been met. Wouldn't you, James? Conclusively, Evelyn, the lawyer's voice echoed. So let me be perfectly clear, Evelyn said, stopping just feet from her husband. You don't get half. You don't get the house. You don't get the art. You don't get my Ether AI stock. You get, let me check, the Porsche I bought you for your birthday. which I will not be contesting, and the debt you brought into this marriage. That is all." Michael stared at her, his mouth opening and closing, but no sound came out. The entire foundation of his life, the cushy, luxurious, effortless future he had been planning just minutes before, had evaporated. "Now," Evelyn said, her voice dropping to a deadly quiet, "I believe it's time for you to leave my house." You can't just throw me out," he finally yelled, his voice cracking. "I live here, this is my home. My clothes are upstairs." "Your clothes," Evelyn said, "are being packed into boxes by a team as we speak. They will be sent to wherever it is you plan to go, but you will not be spending another second here." She raised her phone again. "James, send in the team. Code word, Section 4. The front door, which had been in master lockdown, chimed softly and then opened. 2 men entered. They were not police officers. They were taller, broader, and dressed in sharp, tactical black suits. They were part of Evelyn's executive protection detail from her company, a private security firm run by ex-Israeli special forces. They were professional, intimidating, and answered only to Evelyn. "Ms. Vance," the lead officer, a man with a shaved head named Oren, said, with a short nod. "Oren, please escort Mr. Thorne and Ms. Jensen from the premises." "With pleasure," he said. "You can't do this," Michael yelled, backing away as the 2 men advanced. "This is insane. This is my life." "Your life," Evelyn countered, "was a parasitic attachment to my life. The host is now removing the parasite." "Michael!" Clara shrieked, finally finding her voice. It was high and shrill. "Michael, do something. You told me this was yours. You told me you were rich." She turned on him, her terror evaporating into pure, undiluted rage. The spell was broken. The charming, powerful man she thought she'd snared was just nothing. A fraud. "You idiot!" she screamed, shoving him. "You absolute pathetic idiot! You have nothing!" "Clara, baby, calm down," Michael pleaded, fending her off. She's twisting things. We can fight it with what, Michael?" Evelyn asked. "With the money from your consulting firm that hasn't billed a client in 2 years. You won't find a lawyer in this state who will take your case against Hadrian Stone once they see the prenup and the evidence." Oren and his partner flanked them. "Sir, ma'am, you will walk out of this house now." It was not a request. Michael looked at Evelyn, his eyes searching for any sign of the woman he'd married, any softness, any lingering love he could manipulate. He found nothing. He saw only the CEO of Ether AI, a woman who had just hostilely acquired his entire future and liquidated his assets. My phone. My wallet. They're upstairs," he whispered, defeated. "They will be brought to you," Oren said. "And her!" Michael gestured at Clara, who was now openly sobbing, the silver gown bunching around her waist. "The dress? Oh, she can keep it," Evelyn said with a dismissive wave. "Consider it a parting gift, a souvenir from the life you almost had, though I will be billing you for the dry cleaning, and the wine, and the perfume." This final petty cut seemed to break him. Michael sagged. "This way, sir," Oren said, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. Michael and Clara were marched through the grand foyer. The Fazioli piano gleamed mockingly at them. They were escorted out the massive front door, which shut behind them with the heavy final thud of a bank vault. They were left standing in the brightly lit stone driveway next to Michael's Porsche. "Michael, where are we going?" Clara cried, shivering in the cold night air, the smell of l'heure bleue clinging to her. "What are we going to do?" I don't know," Michael said, staring blankly at the closed iron gates. A moment later, a small service panel near the gate opened, and Oren deposited Michael's wallet keys and phone. Then the gates hummed open, just wide enough for the car. The message was clear. Get out. Inside, Evelyn stood alone in the vast, silent living room. The $2,000 bottle of Margot was still on the coffee table next to 2 used glasses. She walked over, picked up the bottle and poured the remaining wine down the sink. She took the 2 glasses and, without ceremony, dropped them into the recycling bin. She activated the house's intercom. Oren, you may send in the cleaning crew. At once, Ms. Vance. A team of 4 professional cleaners who had been waiting with the security team entered. They were specialized, the kind of service used for crime scenes or biohazards. Everything in the master suite, Evelyn ordered, her voice flat. Sheets, towels, rugs. I want them incinerated. I want the closets sanitized, the vanity bleached. I want the scent of them gone. I want the entire house purged. Yes, ma'am. Evelyn walked to her office, locked the door, and finally, for the first time in 6 months, she sat down and allowed herself to cry. It lasted for exactly 5 minutes. Then she dried her eyes, opened her laptop, and began reviewing the term sheets for the Zurich merger. The threat had been neutralized. It was time to get back to work. The days that followed were a blur of legal activity. Michael, homeless and humiliated, had retreated to a mid-range hotel in San Jose, funded by the last dregs of his credit. Clara Jensen, upon realizing that Michael was not only broke, but soon to be infamous, had disappeared. She'd left him with a screaming voicemail about ruining her life, and a $30,000 dress he had no idea what to do with. The Silicon Valley grapevine, already primed by Evelyn's PR team, exploded. The narrative was controlled, precise, and devastating. Evelyn Vance, the brilliant and private CEO, had been the victim of a calculating, parasitic husband. Michael Thorne wasn't just an adulterer. He was a fool. He had been thrown out of his own home, her home, in the most public-private way possible. Every VC he'd ever met stopped returning his calls. The golf clubs he belonged to, under Evelyn's membership, revoked his privileges. He was a social and professional pariah. He tried to hire a lawyer, but as Evelyn predicted, the moment they saw the prenup, the LLC documentation, and the mountains of video evidence, they quoted him retainer fees that he would need to sell his Porsche just to cover. He was in a word finished. Evelyn, meanwhile, was cleansing. The mansion was scoured. She'd had the locks changed, all keypads recoded, and the custom AI voice re-recorded. The new voice was a pleasant, anonymous British male. Hearing her own voice give security alerts had become unbearable. The closet was the hardest part. She had the cleaners dispose of everything Clara had touched. The Jenny Packham gown, the perfume, the shoes. It was a scorched earth policy. She felt no remorse. But as the dust settled, James Hayes, her lawyer, was doing his own due diligence. The divorce was simple, but he was preparing for any possible desperate countersuit from Michael. He was digging into everything Michael had done for the last year. He called Evelyn 3 weeks after the expulsion. "Evelyn, I've found something," he said, his voice grim. It's not just the affair. It's worse." Worse. Evelyn's stomach tightened. "What's worse than what he did? Corporate espionage, Evelyn." Silence. "Explain," she commanded. "I cross-referenced the travel dates from Harrison's report with your corporate calendar. Every time you had a major board meeting or a product development summit, Michael met with the same person 2 days later. A man named David Foreman." Evelyn's blood ran cold. Foreman, the COO of Cybernetics. Exactly, James said. Your biggest competitor. The one that's been mysteriously one step ahead of you on 2 product rollouts this year. It all clicked into place. The VC meetings, the late nights he spent in his office. He wasn't just cheating on her, he was stealing from her. He wasn't just trying to take half her money in a divorce. He was actively trying to destroy the company she had built from scratch, the man she'd shared her bed with, her fears, her triumphs. He had been her enemy, her saboteur all along. He wasn't content with half, Evelyn whispered, the realization hitting her with the force of a physical blow. He wanted it all. He wanted to destroy me and build his own empire on my ashes with her. This was the true betrayal. The affair was a wound to her heart. This was a dagger to her legacy. What did he take, James? Harrison is working on it. He's tracking Michael's data usage on your home network. It looks bad, Evelyn. He accessed the Ether development server multiple times using your admin-level credentials from your home office PC. Evelyn gripped the edge of her desk. Michael knew her passwords. He'd watched her type them 100 times. He'd seen the sticky note hidden under her keyboard with the server root access codes. She had been so careless, so trusting. Evelyn, James said gently, this is no longer a divorce proceeding. This is a federal crime. The fury that Evelyn had felt in the living room returned, but this time it was not hot. It was Arctic. It was the cold, lethal focus that had made her a billionaire. He hadn't just insulted her. He hadn't just betrayed her. He had declared war. And Evelyn Vance never, ever lost a war. Get me everything, James, she said, her voice a flat line. I want encrypted emails. I want server logs. I want bank transfers. I want to know everyone he spoke to at Cybernetics. And then she took a breath. I want you to call the U.S. Attorney's Office and the FBI. 6 months later, the grounds of 14 Serenity Point were unrecognizable. The silence of that terrible night was a distant echo, replaced by the warm, vibrant thrum of humanity. Where Michael and Clara had stood shivering in disgrace, there were now valet attendants in crisp white jackets, parking a line of gleaming black Rivians, Porsches, and Teslas. The mansion, which had been a cold fortress of glass and steel, was now alive. Inside the great room was filled with the brightest minds in technology, finance, and politics. Soft taps from a live trio echoed off the redwood ceilings, and the air was filled with the scent of white gardenias and expensive champagne. The house was finally being used as Evelyn had intended, not as a sterile monument to wealth, but as an incubator for ideas. This was the inaugural gala for the Vance Foundation, a new philanthropic venture Evelyn had established to fund and mentor young women in STEM. The guest of honor was the U.S. Secretary of Commerce. Evelyn moved through the crowd not as a woman hiding, but as a woman reborn. She was wearing a custom-made burgundy Oscar de la Renta gown that set off her dark hair. The 6 months of legal battles, of depositions, of resecuring her company and her home had forged a new, unshakable confidence. She was no longer just a CEO. She was a survivor. The Zurich merger, which she had closed 48 hours after expelling Michael, had been a staggering success. Ether AI's stock had not just tripled, it had quadrupled. The press, catching wind of her corporate success and her dramatic personal victory, had dubbed her the Iron Phoenix. She was officially the youngest self-made decabillionaire in the country. "Evelyn, wonderful," a young woman said, rushing up to her. She was a 22-year-old Stanford prodigy, the first recipient of Evelyn's grant, who had just patented a new algorithm for quantum encryption. Secretary Raimondo loved my presentation. She has excellent taste, Anya. Evelyn smiled, placing a hand on the young woman's shoulder. I knew she would. Now go network. Don't let anyone in this room leave without knowing your name. As Anya hurried off, Evelyn allowed herself a small, genuine smile. This was her new legacy. Not the betrayal, but the rebuilding. She saw him then standing near the massive fireplace, patiently waiting. James Hayes, her lawyer, her confidant, her co-conspirator. He looked relaxed in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, a glass of champagne in his hand. He caught her eye and gave her a subtle nod, gesturing toward the terrace. She excused herself and stepped out into the cool night air. The 30-foot glass walls were now open seamlessly, blending the party with the panoramic view of the glittering bay area. You're a long way from a hotel suite with a laptop, James, she said, joining him at the railing. And you're a long way from the woman I spoke to that night, he replied, his voice full of warmth and genuine admiration. Look at this. Look at what you've done. You didn't just win, Evelyn. You conquered. We won, James, she corrected him, accepting the glass he offered. To closing all accounts. To closing all accounts, he echoed, clinking his glass against hers. They sipped in comfortable silence for a moment, the sound of the party, a dull roar behind them. The last of the paperwork came through this morning, James said, his tone shifting from celebrate to business. The civil part, at least. It's done. The divorce, Evelyn stated. It felt like a word from another lifetime. Finalized. Total and complete default judgment in your favor, James said. He didn't even show for the final hearing. His public defender tried to file a motion to reconsider the prenup, but Judge Michelson shut him down so fast, I almost felt sorry for the man. Almost, Evelyn said, her voice devoid of emotion. The prenup held just as we knew it would. The morality clause was deemed irrefutably proven. But the best part, James said, a grim smile touching his lips, was the asset settlement, or lack thereof. He got the car, Evelyn recalled. He did get the car, James confirmed. But then I presented the invoices, the $2,000 for the 2005 Margot he and Miss Jensen consumed, the $4,500 for the biohazard cleaning crew to purge the master suite, as you so aptly put it. And of course the $30,000 invoice for the parting gift, the Jenny Packham gown. The judge ruled that these were not marital expenses, but personal debts incurred through acts of profound and malicious disrespect. He placed a lien on the Porsche for the full amount. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. So Michael couldn't pay the $36,500. The car was seized by the court last week and sold at auction. After paying the impound fees, the auction house commission and our invoices, he was left with a certified check for $814.12. Evelyn stared out at the city lights. $814.12. 10 years of his life bartered away for less than $1,000. It's finished, then, she whispered. The final messy string of their marriage was cut. The civil case is finished, James said, his voice dropping lower. He set his champagne glass down on the stone railing. But that Evelyn was just the housekeeping. This, he pulled his phone from his pocket, is the reckoning. Evelyn turned to face him, her entire body tensing. This was the one she had been waiting for, the second betrayal. The federal case, she said. The U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of California handed down the indictment 3 days ago. It was kept under seal until they were ready to move, James said. They didn't just move Evelyn. They struck. Go on. Our evidence was the key. The server logs you had. The network packet analysis from Harrison. The burner phones he found in Michael's old office. It wasn't just a one-time thing. It was a systematic 2-year-long campaign to defraud Ether AI. Michael was selling your R&D pipeline to David Foreman at Cybernetics, your Project Chimera blueprints, your Q3 launch strategy. He sold it all. For how much? Evelyn asked, her voice dangerously quiet. We found the offshore account. Foreman had transferred him just over $1.2 million. A pathetic amount, considering what he was giving them. He was a fool in every aspect of his life. He just wanted something that was his, even if it was blood money. The betrayal still stung sharper and deeper than the affair. The affair was an attack on her heart. The espionage was an attack on her mind. It was an assault on her legacy, on the thousands of employees who depended on her. What about Foreman and Cybernetics? Cybernetics, faced with overwhelming evidence and an impending SEC investigation, did exactly what we predicted. They fired Foreman and 2 other VPs claiming they were rogue employees. They're cooperating fully, which means Foreman is completely, utterly alone. His golden parachute was revoked. His stock options were voided. He's trying to cut a deal, but the feds are more interested in his partner. Michael, Evelyn said. Michael, James confirmed. He was arrested this afternoon at 3:15 p.m. Where? Not at a hotel. He couldn't afford them anymore. He was in a run-down, month-to-month studio apartment in Fremont, right by the train tracks. He'd already sold the $800 check for cash, probably to make rent. Harrison's team had been on him for weeks, just in case. James's face was grim. He was apparently eating cereal from the box when the FBI's Economic Crimes Task Force rammed his door. He didn't just lose his money, Evelyn. He lost himself. The U.S. Attorney sent my office the mugshot. He's gaunt. He's lost at least 30 pounds, looks 20 years older. He didn't fight. He didn't argue. They said he just crumbled, put his hands behind his back, and started sobbing. Evelyn closed her eyes for a moment, picturing it. The handsome, charismatic man who had charmed her, who had worn $5,000 suits and laughed in her home, now in handcuffs, being led out of a squalid apartment by federal agents. The image brought her no joy, only a profound cold and final sense of completion. And her? Evelyn asked, opening her eyes. The blogger, Clara. Ms. Jensen. Oh, she's long gone. Harrison tracked her back to her hometown in Ohio. She's a receptionist at a dental office. The feds paid her a visit. She was terrified, told them everything. But she knew nothing about the corporate espionage. To her, Michael was just a rich, cheating husband. She was a pawn just like he was, an irrelevant one. They let her go. She'll be a footnote in his sentencing report. Evelyn nodded, processing it all. The intricate interlocking pieces of his downfall. What will he get? The U.S. Attorney is ecstatic. This is a high-profile, slam-dunk case. They're making an example of him. He betrayed his wife, yes, but in the eyes of the law, he betrayed his country by committing economic espionage against a company vital to national technological infrastructure. That's how they're framing it. The charges are conspiracy to commit wire fraud, theft of trade secrets, and economic espionage. He's facing a minimum of 10 years in a federal penitentiary, Evelyn. The prosecutor is pushing for 15. 15 years. a lifetime. He had so many chances. Evelyn said, her voice barely a whisper. She was speaking to the night, to the city, to herself. He could have done anything. He could have built something. I would have backed him. I did back him time and time again. She turned to James, her eyes clear and hard in the moonlight. But he chose to be a parasite. It wasn't enough for him to have things. He had to take them. It wasn't enough to be married to me. He had to try and become me by stealing what I had built. Some people can't stand to be near the sun, Evelyn, James said gently. It just reminds them of their own darkness. All they want to do is cast a shadow. He's in the shadow for good now. Justice, Evelyn said, tasting the word. It wasn't hot and fiery like revenge. It was cold, clean, and absolute. Like a perfectly balanced equation. A respectful cough came from the doorway. It was Orrin, her head of security, who had been with her since that night. Ms. Vance, he said, his presence a comforting reassurance. My apologies. Secretary Raimondo is preparing to leave, but she's asking for you. She wants to discuss the new National AI Initiative and your potential role on the advisory board. Evelyn took a deep breath, the cool night air filling her lungs. She looked at James, who smiled and raised his empty glass in a final silent toast. The past was a closed file. A painful, expensive, but ultimately finished lesson. The future was waiting for her, right inside her own home, represented by one of the most powerful women in the country. Evelyn smoothed the burgundy silk of her gown. She turned away from the dark, sweeping view of the valley and the city beyond. She didn't look back. Thank you, Orrin, she said, her voice strong and clear. Please tell the secretary I'm on my way. She walked back into the party, back into the blaze of light, back into the life she had not just reclaimed, but forged anew. And that's what happens when you mistake a woman's love for weakness. He thought the mansion was his prize, but it was her fortress. He thought he was a player, but she was the one controlling the entire game. The ultimate karma isn't just getting caught. It's realizing you were never even in control. He didn't just lose the house, he lost his freedom, all because he underestimated the woman who built the very walls he was hiding behind. What did you think of Evelyn's revenge? Was it brilliant, or was it ice cold? Let me know in the comments below what you would have done in her position. Thank you so much for watching. If you loved this story of karma and justice, make sure to hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to see it, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell. We post new stories every single week, and you don't want to miss what's coming next.